Hi everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my garden and welcome to my office filming space. I have always wanted to have a filming space that I could just set up, come in and sit down and start talking, and that's what this space right here is trying to be. It'll probably change a little bit as time goes on, as I watch and I edit the videos and I try and decide, how I want to adjust it. But this is the very first video that I am filming kind of in my studio. It's not my studio, it's my office. It's a little corner of my office, but I'm really, really excited about it. So bear with me if there's any lighting issues or focus issues or audio issues. I'm trying to get it all the kinks worked out. What I wanted to talk about today is I wanted to talk about fall planted, spring blooming bulbs. And it's really important to talk about it now because now is the time to start thinking about them. Now's the time to start ordering them, purchasing them, getting your hands on them before they sell out so that they're ready to go, whether you need to pre-chill them or whether you just have them in your hands. They're ready to go when it's time to put them in the ground, whether it's September, October, November, or December. That's usually about the time when you want to plant fall planted, spring blooming bulbs. So what am I talking about when I say fall planted, spring blooming bulbs? Those are the ones that you plant before it really gets cold in the dead of winter. And those bulbs basically stay in the ground for all winter. And then in spring, whether it's early spring, mid-spring, or late spring, then they pop up. They are tulips, daffodils, snowdrops, snowflakes, scilla, anemones, ranunculus, anemones and ranunculus for us for warmer environments, Amaryllis, and Spanish bluebells. I do have my computer down here. I need to get some type of table so it's like this so that I'm not constantly looking down, but I will work on that. So I'm gonna look down here at my notes a little bit. So you kind of wanna think about those. These bulbs do sell out. It's very common for, especially the really like the trendy ones, to sell out pretty quickly. And I've noticed as I was going through and I was looking at the bulb sites, a lot of them actually have sold out. And I actually purchased mine back in July, most of them back in July. But the reason for doing this video is my Costco in California is actually selling bulbs right now. And I look forward to this day all year long. I'm one of those crazy people that run into Costco and I'm like reaching down into the back trying to find the good packs of the Costco bulbs because I just love buying bulbs from Costco. One, because it's fun to like the find, like when you go to TJ Maxx or something and you want to find the sale one, right? That's kind of how I think about Costco bulbs. But I do think Costco bulbs are really, really good bang for your buck, right? With Costco bulbs though, they are more the regular bulbs, the bulbs that are very common that you tend to see a lot of places. If you want to get more unique or more interesting ones or more rare type of fall planted bulbs, then you need to go online and you need to special order them. And those are the ones that you need to do pretty quickly now at this point. It might even be a little bit too late for some of the varieties. So what I wanted to do today is talk about all the bulbs that I have, that I'm getting for my garden this year, all the bulbs that I need to plant. I counted them up and it's over 2,500 bulbs, which is crazy for me. That is so insane for me. So that is mostly daffodils, I'll have to say. Daffodils are my favorite flower, hands down. I just love that they're the first flower to bloom. Here in California, zone 9B, daffodils do naturalize for us. We don't have to pre-chill them. They naturalize for us. They come back every year. They're just such a fantastic fall planted bulb for us, and they reliably come back for us in zone 9B. So I really like planting daffodils, and I know the daffodils that I am planting in my garden are gonna come back year after year. So I really wanted to get those in the ground this first fall that I'm in my new property. Then I also have alliums. Alliums will tend to come back for us. And then I have anemones, ranunculus, tulips. I have some amaryllis that I'll tell you all about that I'm actually gonna put inside. And then I do have some German iris or bearded iris as well. I think that's it. Those are the varieties that I got. So I wanted to talk about the varieties, why I chose the certain varieties that I got, what my plan is for them. But then I also wanted to talk to you all about fall planted spring blooming bulbs in zone 9 or in higher zones really. And when I talk about higher zones, I'm talking about zones 8, 9, 10, and maybe 11. I don't know, 11 might be a little hot. But I'm talking about those higher zones because it's a little bit different for us in these higher, warmer zones because we don't get cold enough during the winter for a lot of these bulbs to act the way they normally would in nature. So it doesn't mean that we can't have them, that we can't plant them. It just means that we have to do things a little bit different that other people in lower zones have to do. And it's just something that we have to know. It's kind of like a secret, and I try and talk about it a lot because once you know the secret, it's really easy, but there are a couple things that you have to do for certain bulbs in these warmer zones. So I wanted to go over that as well. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to go over is as I'm going through each variety, just talk a little bit about some tips and tricks that I've learned for planting each type of fall planted spring blooming bulb. Just things that I've learned along the way that I've noticed have helped me out get a little bit more success, things that have worked really well for me, things that have not worked really well for me. I'll just go through each variety. So hopefully this video is not too long, but I'll pop up pictures of everything that I'm talking about. Since I don't have any actual flowers to show you all, at least I can pop up the photos from the websites and show you all what the plans are. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is pre-chilling, and that is something, I mentioned that a little bit before. Pre-chilling is something that those of us in the higher zones need to know about. So what pre-chilling is taking your fall planted spring blooming bulbs and actually putting them in a cold environment for a certain amount of time. And when I say cold environment, most of the time that means, if you don't have like a walk-in fridge specifically for this, what that usually means is putting them in a refrigerator, not a freezer, that's too cold. You want to put them in a refrigerator. You want to get them around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And the reason for doing this is some of these bulbs need chill time to turn on that signal for them to start blooming. So it's kind of like blueberries need a certain amount of chill time or chill hours. Bulbs need a certain amount of chill time or chill hours as well. And it really, really needs that to get it going. If certain bulbs don't get enough chill time, then either they won't bloom at all, the signal will never be turned on for them to start blooming, or they will bloom, but they'll just be really, really short. And so you'll kind of see a tulip with the bloom like coming right out of the ground, right in the base of the leaves, almost like it has no stem at all. And when you see something like that, that means that bulb didn't get enough chill time to develop that stem fully. So the rule of thumb, and before I say this, I'm gonna put a big asterisk on the screen. Before I say this, I just want to remind all of you that this is just a very loose rule of thumb when we say this. When we talk about zones, specifically the USDA zone map, it is all across the board. My zone 9B that is hot and dry in Central Valley of California is very, very different than zone 9B on the coast of California that is foggy all the time, and the coldest it gets to 60 and the warmest it gets to is like 79 on a really, really hot day, right? We get, down to 28 and we get all the way up to 117. So it's a big difference, yet we're still in the same zone 9B. So the rule of thumb is anybody in zone 7B and above, so 7B, all of zone 8, all of zone 9, all of zone 10, those of us who live in those USDA zones need to pre-chill our bulbs that do need chilling. And I'll go over the varieties that do need chilling as well. Again, when I say stuff like that, I do get a lot of comments of people saying, oh, I'm in zone 8 and I never pre-chill my bulbs and I get tulips all the time. Great. You are in a fantastic situation. Everybody's different, right? So just kind of think of this as if you're starting out, it's kind of the guidelines to start looking towards. It doesn't mean you need to fall. It's not a hard and fast rule, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So the rule of thumb is if you're in zone 7B and above, you need to think about pre-chilling your tulips, your crocus, and your hyacinths. Those are the three main bulbs that need pre-chilling hours. And the rule of thumb is usually about 6 to 12 weeks of chill time. The more, the better. So if you can get all 12 weeks of chill time in the fridge, fantastic. I don't know about you guys, but I don't get my hands on the bulbs until later, right? Until around now. So I usually only get about 8 to 10 weeks of chill time, and that's completely fine. But getting that chill time for those 3 specific bulbs are really important because they will not bloom for us otherwise. If you live in zone 7A or below, right? 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, I don't know how low it goes. I know 3 because Maya from Simply Bloom. So if you live below that, your winters are cold enough. Your winters are like a refrigerator anyway. So you don't need to pre-chill the bulbs. You just have to plant them in the fall and nature will chill them for you. But those of us who live in warmer climates, we need to think about this. And remember, our climates are changing all the time. Sometimes we have warm winters, sometimes we have colder winters. So if you really want to be safe, go ahead and pre-chill your bulbs anyway. Even if you're in zone 8 or zone 7B, go ahead and pre-chill your bulbs anyway, right? Just to be on the safe side. The other thing I want to say for pre-chilling bulbs is you want to put them in the fridge. You want the fridge around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and you want to make sure there's no fruits or veggies in that fridge. The fruits or veggies are going to release that ethylene gas, the same thing that ripens bananas, turns bananas brown, and that ethylene gas is going to affect the bulbs that are being stored in that fridge. So it's going to get them moldy, or it's going to signal them to start sprouting and blooming already, like basically ripen. So I have a garage fridge that we store like sodas in and waters in. So I will usually put my bulbs in there. I'm actually really lucky this year because when we moved into this house, they left a fridge, and instead of getting rid of it, we just put it into the garage, and that is my bulb fridge. So I'm very excited about that. So just remember, if you don't have a fridge where you're not going to store your fruits and vegetables, then you got to think of something else, right? You can purchase pre-chilled bulbs. They're kind of hard to find sometimes, and they will cost more money, but they are out there. So just know, if you don't have a fridge available for you to pre-chill whatever bulbs you find and you buy, you can get them pre-chilled. Okay, so what bulbs need to be pre-chilled and what bulbs don't need to be pre-chilled? Again, this is not a hard and fast rule because it kind of depends on where you live, right? I live in zone 9B. We have daffodils that grow on the side of the freeway. If daffodils are growing on the side of the freeway, they don't need to be pre-chilled. They get enough chill period over our winters, right? But the same zone 9B, maybe in Tampa, Florida, they don't get as cold as we do, and so they're not going to be able to grow daffodils without pre-chilling them. Don't quote me on that because I don't live in Tampa, but I know Mr. Gardeners do, and they've told me they have a hard time with daffodils. So basically, if you're in zones 7B and above, I want you to think of hyacinths and hyacinths, crocus, and tulips are the main ones that you need to pre-chill. If you're in zone 10 and 11, really 9B, 10, 11, but if you're in California 9B, I wouldn't worry about it. You need to kind of look around, and you need to kind of ask around in your environment. And if you're mainly in the south, like the East Coast and the south, you need to kind of look in to see if you need to pre-chill your daffodils, or pre-chill your snowdrops, or pre-chill your paper whites, or anything like that. So on that note, the bulbs that really don't need to be chilled are Alliums, Amaryllis, Daffodils with an asterisk, paper whites, snowdrops, snowflakes, Spanish bluebells, anemones, ranunculus, and scilla. I found a fantastic website from the Sacramento Master Gardeners. I live very close to Sacramento, and they have a whole list of regional recommendations on what to do with fall planted bulbs. So just look around, look at, Master Gardener, your town or city, fall planted bulbs, and see if they have any handouts or anything like that. You can also call your local Master Gardeners, and they might be able to help you as well. All right, so let's get on with the different varieties of fall planted spring blooming bulbs that at least I am planting in my garden for this year for 2024 blooms. So I'm going to start with my favorite, and that is daffodils. And daffodils they are just the best. When I was a little girl, I loved this poem called Daffodowndilly, and I think that is why I love daffodils so much, is just from that poem. I'll write that poem in the description down below. I just loved it. It was in that A.A. Milne book. I just love that. I love that poem. So daffodils, again, they naturalize really well here in zone 9B. They're gonna naturalize really, really well in my garden as long as you leave them up long enough after they bloom. So what you wanna do is they'll bloom and then they'll die back. You can deadhead the bloom, so just cut off the bloom, but then leave the foliage up for minimum 6 weeks, right? Kind of wait till the foliage starts to get yellow and brown and die, and then you can cut the foliage back, and that will allow that daffodil bulb to have enough energy to be able to bloom the next season. So that's my plan for all these daffodil bulbs that I'm putting in my garden this year. So I have, let's see, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000, 1,100 daffodil bulbs. That's embarrassing. Okay. I might have gone overboard a little bit. I don't care. So the first variety that I'm planting that I'm the most excited about, and I'm pretty sure this variety is going in the zigzag planter. This is from colorblends.com, and this is called the Bloom Factory Daffodil Mix. I have had my eye on this since last year. Last year I planted the Spring Loaded mix from colorblends.com in my front swoop in my old property. Oh, it was so incredibly beautiful. It had all these different varieties of daffodils, that spring loaded mix. And so I figured, okay, these blends are good. These blends are good. I really like them. I want to try all of them. So Bloom Factory is the next blend that I want to try. And colorblends.com says it's a blend of multicolored daffodils in pale yellow, gold, and white. When planted closely, they make a sheet of color so dense you can hardly see the leaves, and they bloom mid-spring. So that sounds awesome to me. That sounds amazing. I would love to see that, just like a mass of daffodils. Can you imagine if you had like a field of this daffodil mix and it just looked like just yellow and white? Oh my goodness, I can just imagine that it would be beautiful. So I am gonna note that this variety blooms mid-spring. The way that fall planted spring blooming bulbs, the way they classify it is they usually classify it late winter, early spring, mid-spring, and then late spring, early summer. So just kind of think of 3 different times. And it's important to know, because if you're planting 2 varieties right next to each other, you want to make sure that they're going to bloom at the same time, right? Say you have some alliums planted and then some daffodils in front. Well, if the alliums bloom really, really late summer, or not late summer, late spring, early summer. Actually, some alliums bloom mid to late summer. And then you get some early blooming daffodils. They're not gonna bloom at the same time, and you're gonna lose your whole plan that you had in your mind. So just kind of pay attention to bloom time. If you care about something like that, I am not gonna care about something like that, because I have tried that. I've tried to time it appropriately, and it just never seems to work for me. It just, like, one variety will start blooming and then it'll die, and then the next variety will start blooming. So I try not to think about it too much anymore. I just kind of throw bulbs out and hope that I'll have color all season long or all spring long, but you know, you can kind of plan it. The next variety that I'm trying of daffodils that I'm trying in my garden this year is a new variety. It's also from colorblends.com. It is not a blend though. It's a new trumpet daffodil called Watch Up. And I'm really excited about this one because the spring loaded mix that I was talking about in my front swoop, there was a variety, this white variety in there that I just thought it was so incredibly pretty. And I think I posted about it on my stories on Instagram, and Colorblends wrote back and said, that's called Watch Up. It's new and it's really, really great. So as soon as they told me that, I thought, okay, I want a mass of these somewhere in my garden. So I ordered 100 Watch Up daffodils, white, big, tall trumpet daffodils, white petals with a nose that starts out yellow and it matures to a cream. And so it's supposed to be a really, really good landscape daffodil, which is exactly what I want. And again, this one blooms early to mid-spring. So this one is, Watch Up is gonna bloom before the Bloom Factory mix starts blooming. They might overlap a little bit, but it is gonna start blooming before, according to what they say. All right, next variety I have is the classic. Of course, I'm gonna have Dutch Master. Dutch Master is that really, really big classic daffodil, the one that I love. It's the most widely grown daffodil in the world, And this is the one that you'll see at like the big box stores, like in the big bags. And it's such a good performer, and it's so big. And I think it's so popular for a reason, 100% for a reason. So they naturalize really well. This is the variety that you mostly see on the sides of freeways here in California. And that's because you can plant one of them, and then they'll go, you know, the next year there'll be 3, and then the next year there'll be 5, and you know, and it just keeps going and going and going. So they're really, really beautiful, and they bloom early spring. So one of the first to bloom, which is really, really good. I have 100 of those, by the way, and I'm probably gonna buy more, honestly. They're so cheap. You can get them anywhere. You know, I love these. So these Dutch Masters I actually purchased from Costco in the big bags. They're super cheap. They're super, super cheap. Actually, I think if you get them at Costco, they're even cheaper than if you get them at the big box stores. Not I think. They are cheaper than if you get them at the big box stores. So one thing that you have to pay attention to when you look at prices is you kind of also have to pay attention to bulb size, because the smaller the bulbs, the smaller the bloom's going to be, the less blooms there are going to be if there could be multiple blooms coming out of the bulb. So just kind of think about that. When you go and you purchase bulbs on a website, on a bulb website, you can buy the big bulbs and you know you're going to get a nice big bulb with lots of blooms, you know, that's going to be pretty reliable, but you're going to pay more money for that big bulb than if you buy a newer, smaller one that's not going to bloom as heartily, you know, as the bigger one. So just kind of think about that when you're purchasing bulbs. Okay, next I have is another one from Costco. These were all impulse purchases. If you guys don't follow me on Instagram, it was really funny. So someone that follows me on Instagram sent me a message and said, hey, PSA, Costco has bulbs. So I immediately stopped what I was doing and ran to Costco and filled my cart up with a whole bunch of bulbs. And then I was taking pictures of it, and I was doing stories on Instagram, basically bragging about my bulb haul. Well, funny enough, Jason happened to be watching my stories that day. So I get a text from him saying like, why are you buying so many bulbs? Like, he doesn't care. He was just giving me a hard time, but it was kind of like I was caught red-handed. So, and I bought a lot of bulbs from Costco. Costco is my jam when it comes to buying bulbs. They're so good. So the next variety I got is also from Costco, and Costco bulbs are all from Longfield Gardens. And you can actually purchase bulbs directly from the website of Longfield Gardens. And when you purchase from the website, you're gonna get the more unique ones, the more harder to get ones, whereas the ones that you find at Costco are the more, I don't want to say generic, they're the more common ones, right? Still fantastic, but they are more common. So the next blend is called a Big Blooming Mix. I've never tried this mix before. It looked really pretty. I got 100 of them, and it's a mix of early blooming daffodils. That's why I grabbed them, because early blooming, in shades of yellow, gold, whites, and bicolors. So it sounds like it's just an early blooming mix. So I'm gonna put all these together, like these blends together, and mark them just so that I know, so that come next year when I see this mix at Costco, because they tend to have the same ones year after year, I'll know to kind of look for it. One of the kind, just if you guys are, well, I'll get it when I talk about Alliums. There was an Allium mix at Costco that was amazing, and I couldn't find it this year, and I was so bummed. But if you guys find out your Costco, grab it. Okay, so the next daffodil is 150 of Ice Follies. Ice Follies are another really common one, just like Dutch Master. It's won awards from the RHS, which is the Royal Horticultural Society in Great Britain. It is a frilly lemon yellow cup surrounded by pure white petals. Always one of the first to bloom and a good naturalizer. Again, I really, really am drawn to daffodils that are the first to bloom, because tulips tend to be a little bit later in the season. So daffodils, if you can get daffodils that are really, really early, it just gives you color that much earlier in the season. That's why I like paper whites too, because paper whites bloom really early. I actually didn't get any paper whites from my garden, so might need to add that to the list. Then I did get 200 of another Costco Longfield Garden blend called White Lion and Golden Ducat Mix. White Lion has creamy white petals layered with bright yellow ruffles. Fragrance is similar to gardenias, And Golden Ducat is a large yellow flower with multiple layers of petals, a good naturalizer, and performs well in warmer zones. So this mix just seems like a kind of like a ruffly mix, which is really pretty. I tend to see the ruffly daffodils aren't as sturdy as the trumpet daffodils, but they're still pretty. You just might want to pack them a little bit closer to each other so that they don't fall over. I think one thing, you know, with the Golden Ducat, something to note, when it says it performs well in warmer zones, mostly what that's talking about is like the south, right? So zones where the winters don't get as cold as they do in other areas of the, of zone 9B or zone 8 or zone 10 or something like that. So if you do live in the south and you're having a hard time with daffodils or tulips or whatever, you can actually go on these websites and you can look for bulbs that are specifically for your area, specifically for the south. And on colorblends.com, there's actually blends that are specifically for the south, for hot areas. So it's just something to note if you really, really want blooms like that. Just kind of think about that. All right, next we're gonna talk about alliums. I love alliums and I fell in love with alliums this year because of that mix that I bought at Costco. I don't remember what it was called. I just remember that it was a mix, and I basically threw all these alliums together because I was in a garden show in May. And like I was saying, it's really hard to plan when certain things are gonna bloom. So I kind of just hit it from all sides, and I just planted a whole bunch of different version of alliums, hoping that one of them would be blooming during the garden tour. And they were. It was fantastic. It worked perfectly. But in that mix, they also had a variety called Summer Drummer Alliums that are incredible. They are just the coolest bulb. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited about them. I'm so excited to learn about them. Mine got like 6 feet tall. I kid you not. And they say that they really only get 4 to 5 feet tall. Mine got 6 feet tall, 100%. And when I moved out of my home in these were planted in my old property. When I moved out in August, right? They were still standing. They obviously had faded, but they still had that beautiful structure standing up in my garden, and it was stunning. They were stunning. So I cannot wait to get them in this garden because they should come back for us here in zone 9B. So they were hard to find. Of course, at Costco, I couldn't find that blend. So what I did is I did find them. Let's see, hold on. I did find them at K. Van Borgeden. I hope I'm saying that right. I'll put the link down below. They're Summer Drummer Alliums. These say only 4 to 5 feet tall. They get 6-inch ball blooms, and they bloom mid to late summer. They didn't bloom mid to late summer for me. They bloomed early summer for me. Well, I would say mid-summer for me, and the rest of my alliums bloomed late spring to early summer-ish. You know, it's such a shot in the dark to say mid to late summer or something like that. But they definitely bloomed later than the rest of my fall planted bulbs. Something that a couple things to note about alliums. I know I went straight to Summer Drummer Alliums, but they're just my favorite. Alliums do not need to be pre-chilled, so don't worry about pre-chilling them. Again, just store them in some room temperature area. They'll be fine. Here in my area, right, California, Northern California, we want to plant these anywhere from September to November. It can be anytime, September, October, November, anytime around that time. And then you want to plant them as deep as the bulb height. So basically, if the bulb's 3 inches, you want to plant them 6 inches deep, right? So that you can, am I explaining that? So if a bulb is 3 inches tall, you just want to double the size of the bulb size. And if they're wider, because sometimes allium bulbs are wider than they are tall, then you want to do the biggest width. Alliums come in different shapes and sizes, different heights, different sizes of the balls. even different shapes. Sometimes there's really compact balls that are like a solid purple, Dr. Seuss looking thing. Sometimes they're a lot thinner, kind of like the Schubertii Alliums, really, really beautiful, but very different than what you notice. And then of course, something like a summer drummer that's 6 feet tall is gonna be different than something else that maybe only gets like 30 inches tall. So the other varieties that I got of Alliums, I'm actually trying a pink one this year, which I'm excited about. This is also from the K. Van Bourgondian, and it's called Pink Jewel. It's 32 inches tall, so not that tall, 6-inch ball, so kind of just the regular size ball, and it blooms early to mid-summer, so that's gonna bloom before the summer drummer Alliums. Then I went crazy at Costco again, and I got 18 of the Gladiator Alliums. Those are one of the biggest, probably Globe Master Alliums are the biggest. Gladiator is a little bit smaller than Globe Master. It blooms late spring. Then we have Pinball Wizard, which has bigger balls, bigger flower clusters. The stems are shorter and stockier. So if you like have a really windy area, this might be a good variety for you. This one says the seed heads look attractive long after the bloom, which is, you really want that because the seed heads are really, really pretty. I remember when I was at Tracy's house, Plaid and Poppies in Michigan, and she had a garden tour, she still had her Alliums up and they were beautiful. They were obviously faded, but it was such a cool structure. They were just beautiful. So then I got 60 of the Purple Rain. They are smaller. They have loosely packed flowers. They're more open, and they bloom late spring to early summer. And then I got 40 of a white and purple mix called Purple Sensation, which is a very common purple variety, and then the Mount Everest mix. And they're similar in height, and they're said to bloom at the same time, about the same time. So again, when you buy a mix like that, the company's basically telling you that they think these will bloom at the same time. So that's kind of a good bet. They also say that this mix will return year after year, so that's pretty good too. And then finally, one that I really had my eye out for, and I actually had to, seek these out and find them. I ended up finding them at Eden Brothers website. These are the Allium Giganteum. And my reason for purchasing these Giganteum is because they are, I don't want to say they're not native to our area, but they're really, really good for our area. For those of you who watched my video when I went and visited the Arboretum with Donna Billick, and she did Nature's Gallery, which was this amazing art installation in the UC Davis Arboretum. In that art installation, they talked about a whole bunch of plants that are really, really good for my region, my specific area. And those plants I want to start incorporating into my garden. You'll see, I'll talk more about this in probably a couple weeks. But one of those plants that Nature's Gallery featured is Allium Giganteum. So it's a good one for us. It's a good one to use, and it's a good one that's going to come back year after year for us. So I really wanted to get my hands on these. I got 10 of them from Eden Brothers, and 6 to 8 inch diameter balls, and the stalks can be up to 4 feet tall. So they're pretty tall too, not as tall as summer drummers, but I'm really excited to see how they do. Okay, let's talk about Ranunculus. Ranunculus, and I usually put Ranunculus in with anemones. They're pretty similar. They don't bloom at exactly the same time for me. Anemones usually bloom a little bit earlier, but they're pretty similar. So for Ranunculus, no pre-chill is needed, but what is needed for Ranunculus, and they're not called bulbs, they're called corms, but a lot of people just kind of lump them all together. 2 weeks before you're ready to plant them out. And here in this area, you want to plant out anywhere from September to December, and I will talk about that in a second. About 2 weeks before you're ready to plant out, you want to soak the corms for about 4 hours because they need to rehydrate, and then you do want to pre-sprout them. The reason why pre-sprouting them in our area is important is because if you pre-sprout your ranunculus corms, which means you soak them and then you put them in like a tray, like a seed starting tray, and then you cover them with a little bit of soil and you get them started sprouting, started rooting before you actually put them outside. Those will bloom about 3 weeks earlier than corms that you don't pre-sprout. So you can just soak them and then immediately plant them outside. That doesn't work very well for at least my climate where I live, because our springs can be so short. Basically, we can come out of winter, and when we come out of winter and the ranunculus will say, okay, it's time to start blooming, and they start growing and growing and growing, but they're not actually flowering yet because it takes a little bit of time. Then, they start to flower, and then if it's too hot, those blooms will start to wilt. These blooms can't handle the heat. So sometimes here, at least in our region, our springs are so short that we need that 3 extra weeks to be able to have this full bloom of ranunculus. So I've realized that it's really, really important to pre-sprout your ranunculus. It's something that I absolutely need to do. For those of you who have longer springs than I do, you might be able to get away with just planting them out. Ranunculus need to avoid freezing at all costs. They need to not be frozen. So if you live in a place where the ground freezes, you need to wait till the spring to plant these out. You need to wait till early spring, or you can plant them out in an area that's a little bit protected with like a tunnel or something like that. But here, zones 8 through 10, you can plant in the fall, not need to worry about it, and you're gonna get earlier blooms. And if you pre-sprout them, you're gonna get even earlier blooms, which is really important. They have a really good vase life, up to 10 days. And just remember that they open during the day and they close at night. I got 360 of the Piketty Tomer Purple Mix from Costco, Longfield Gardens. And then I also purchased 100 of the Pink Confetti Mix from Eden Brothers. That includes the Labelle Pink, Juliet, Marshmallow, and Salmon Ranunculus varieties. I think I bought these while I was buying the Giganteum because I figured I was already paying for shipping, so I wanted to buy more of them. So I have about 500 ranunculus to plant. So I'll be planting those probably November-ish is my plan. And I'll be planting those in my no-till beds. I'll be planting, along with the ranunculus, I'll also be planting anemones. Anemones are similar. You want to plant them anywhere from September to December. And anemone corms are notoriously difficult to tell which side is up. I actually planted them, and I planted them upside down, and they actually still bloomed. But when I took them out, you could see the stem had gone down, turned, and then had come back out, so they weren't as robust as they could have been. So what you want to do is you want to plant the scar side up, and that's the correct way to do it. I think I always think different. It's like different in my mind. I think it's like pointy side down is what you need to think, and I always think pointy side up. So just kind of think about that. Make sure you're doing it the right way. Look it up on a good YouTube video, not this video. Look it up on a good YouTube video before you plant your anemones, because I always get messed up. I ordered 60 of the Bordeaux, which is this beautiful wine colored version, and those are from Eden Brothers. All right, let's talk about tulips. This is the big one. This is the difficult one for us. So like I said, if you live in 7B and above, you want to think about pre-chilling your tulips. That's it's not a hard and fast rule. I'm sure lots of you in zone 8 don't need to pre-chill your tulips, but just think about it, right? And if you notice that you have tulips that tend to be kind of short and stocky, you might need to pre-chill them. And again, you might have a warm winter and you might ruin your whole crop of tulips if you don't pre-chill them. So just kind of think about it. So for tulips, you need to pre-chill them 6 to 12 weeks, longer the better. You need to buy or have them delivered in September or October is kind of where you need to think about it. And you want to plant in November to December. That's for my area. I was really, really late last year in planting my tulips. I just couldn't get around to it. I actually planted my tulips the second week of January, and it was fine. It was totally fine. As long as the ground is not frozen, you can plant your tulips, right? Obviously there's a point where it's gonna be too hot before they're ready to bloom. But just get your tulips in, even if you're late. I was a month late basically, and my tulips were absolutely fine, and I had a beautiful show this year. So I got 100 of the Color Blends Gentle Giants Mix. And this is a blend of 4 jumbo tulips in the shades of pink and peach, blooming mid-spring. I can't wait to see these. I love jumbo tulips. I think that they're so pretty. One of my favorite tulips, probably my favorite tulip, is the Big Love tulip. that I actually purchased from Costco a couple years back, and they actually came back. They naturalized for me last year, and I couldn't find them this year at Costco, but one of you on Instagram told me you found them at your Costco. So just keep an eye out for the Big Love tulips. But I'm excited to try this Gentle Giants mix because it just sounds just as good as the Big Loves. Then I got 100 of the K. Van Borgeden Darwin Hybrid Tulip Pink Impression. And it says, Pink Impression is the best long-stemmed pink tulip for landscaping, which is why I wanted to get it. Because I want all these for landscaping. I don't even want them for cut flowers. I know that sounds funny. I'm not even planning on cutting them. I never cut my tulips because I always want to see them in the ground because I just want color in the ground. And I can always buy, flowers from the grocery store to bring inside during that time, but I cannot get anything in the ground. So I never end up cutting my tulips really, or even my daffodils that much. So landscape presence is really important to me when it comes to my tulips. So I had bought 100 of the Pink Impressions online, and then I found them at Costco the other day, and so I bought 150 more. So I have 250 Pink Impression Darwin Hybrid tulips, which I'm very excited about. Then I got kind of a whole bunch of blends of pink and purples from Costco. I got 150 of the Van Eyck, I can't see, EIJK, and the Mystic Van Eyck mix. And then I got 100 of the Purple Lady and Jumbo Pink mix. I think I grew those last year and they were really beautiful as well. And then I got 50 of the Mystic Van Eyck and White Emperor mix. So I'm really excited to see how those do. Really beautiful. Last year I did have a couple red tulips like kind of thrown in everywhere, and it was so beautiful to have a couple red popped in with some of the pink. So I do think I need to go grab a couple red ones as well. I'll make a note for myself. All right, then let's move on to the German iris, aka bearded iris. It's the same type of thing, German or bearded iris. They are actually rhizomes. So I know I'm saying fall planted bulbs, and we've had corms, and we've had bulbs, we've had corms, and now we also have rhizomes. But they're kind of all lumped into the same. You plant them in the fall and they bloom in the spring, and they come in a little compact package that you need to think about what to do with them. So bearded iris is kind of the same thing. I have such luck with bearded iris here. So much luck. They naturalize beautifully, almost too beautifully for us. They are really robust. And so what I wanted to try this year is I wanted to try blues, different colors of blues. So I got 10 of the Eden City Lights, which is like a light blue, no, like a darker blue. And then I got 5 of the K. Van Borgeden Clarence, which is a light blue. First flowers emerge May through June, and it has a second flush of bloom. So this is a reblooming bearded iris. It should have a second flush between August and October. So I'm excited to see how those do. And if those do well, literally by next year, I'll have double or triple of this amount, right? So this is something that you can kind of, if bearded iris does really well for you, this is something that basically you just dig it up, you break up the rhizomes, and then you just plant them separately. And it's actually something you want to do anyway, because if they get too clumped and too compacted in one area, they're not going to bloom as well. They'll bloom much better if you just kind of break them up, even after a year. So you want to plant these in September to December. And these are different because these you want to plant just below the soil surface. It'll have a little neck popping out, and you want to make sure that neck is almost above the soil surface. And if you don't plant them shallow enough, it's really funny. The rhizome will actually kind of push itself out of the ground and lift itself up. It barely wants to be covered by the soil at all. It's really, really weird to start planting plants like this because you think you're doing something wrong, but it is actually the right way to do it. Okay, I'm almost done, I promise. The final one is Amaryllis. Amaryllis shouldn't really be in this video, but I just wanted to talk about this for you all. Amaryllis is a bulb that you can force indoors. You can put them outdoors here, like you can have Naked Lady Amaryllis, and they're absolutely beautiful and they'll spread everywhere out here. But there are some types of Amaryllis that you can actually force indoors. And like I said, you can get the Red Lion mix, or the Red Lion Amaryllis, I know is super common and you can see it everywhere. The Apple Blossom is one that's really common and you can see it everywhere. But there are some really interesting varieties that you can find, and you can almost like collect them kind of. Danielle from North Lawn Flower Farm, I'm pretty sure I know it's Danielle. I'm blanking on the name of her channel right now. I'll link her down below. She's like obsessed with Amaryllis. And it's just it's so sweet to see her obsession with this Amaryllis, because I think her grandmother was really into it or something like that. But it's really neat because this kind of stuff are things that you can kind of get really obsessed with and really, really into. So last year, I tried to get my hands on this one particular Amaryllis called Papilio Butterfly, and I wanted it. I just decided that I wanted it so badly, and I could not get my hands on it. And it was like, if there was a black market for Amaryllis, I would have gone on the black market to get it. So I put my name down to see, as soon as it was back in stock, I wanted them to notify me. And just earlier this month, they notified me and let me know that they were back in stock. So I purchased 3 of them, and 3 cost me almost $100. So they were more than $30 each, which is just, come on, it's just crazy. But I think that they're going to be really pretty, and it's really exciting. And they don't need to be pre-chilled again. But you basically just force them indoors, and that's like a whole nother story. But that's one that I want you all to start thinking about, because this is something to start thinking about so that we have blooms in the winter and the early spring when we're just dying for some color. So just kind of think about your Amaryllis, whether it's the kind you want to plant outside, if you're in the zones that you can plant it outside, or the ones that you want to force indoors. I have my 3 that I'm very excited about. Last year, I tried Amaryllis in water, like just having them in the water, like the hyacinth vases. That worked terribly. Like really, they all rotted. I was really sad about it. So this year, these Papillon butterflies, or Papilio butterfly Amaryllis, I am going to plant normally in a pot, like it's going to be completely normal. So I just went over 2,566 bulbs, and now I have a list of a couple more varieties that I want, but I just wanted to go over all of these with you all. And the point for this video is to say, hey, start looking for your bulbs, because they're going to start getting sold out. I've noticed, I went kind of grabbing a couple of these pictures today, and I've noticed that a lot of things have already sold out as well. So if you live in my area, I know that there's been some of you that have been texting me and emailing and asking what type of bulbs you should get. Go with the daffodils, 100%. Go with the tulips if you're okay with, kind of pre-chilling them and all that kind of stuff. And then go with the really interesting ones that kind of spark your interest and make you obsessed with this certain variety. It's a really fun thing to do. And I think that it's really fun to have something like that to think about during the winter and early spring when we can't do too much in our gardens, unfortunately. This is a really fun way to feed that part of our soul during the winter. So think about it. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope you all have a lot of bulbs that you're going to plant in your garden, and I hope you all have a chance to get in your garden today.